The Tuesday, November 12th meeting of the Eden Prairie City Council is now called to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just a brief announcement about Open Podium. It's an opportunity for Eden Prairie residents to address the City Council on issues related to the Eden Prairie City government before each council meeting, which are typically held the first and third Tuesdays of each month. We altered it this month. Typically open podiums from 6:30 to 6:55 in this council chamber. If you wish to speak at Open Podium, please contact the city manager's office at 952-949-8412 by noon of the meeting date with your name, phone number, and subject matter so that we can be better prepared for you. If time permits, after scheduled speakers are finished, the mayor will open the floor to unscheduled speakers. Open Podium is not recorded or televised. If you have any questions about Open Podium, please contact the city manager's office. We do have a few proclamations and presentations this evening. Mr. Getchow.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. We are very excited tonight to present our Sustainable Eden Prairie Awards, and with that, I will introduce our Public Works Director, Robert Ellis.
Yep. Good evening, Robert Ellis, and I'm stepping in for Carol Lundgren, who traditionally has, through being our Sustainability Coordinator, has presented the Sustainable Eden Prairie Awards, and unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight. But with that, I'll share that this is the third year that we're presenting residents and businesses the Sustainable Eden Prairie Award. And this is an award that recognizes significant and innovative investments that contribute to the overall sustainability of our community in the primary focus areas of landscaping, energy, waste, and water. This year's nominations were accepted starting in July and running through the end of August. You need only be a resident of Eden Prairie or a business owner and have completed a project or initiative that demonstrates a commitment to sustainability. Nominee applications for the awards were received by staff, then presented to the Conservation Commission, who provided nominee recommendations. Tonight we'll be honoring 4 award recipients, and we're fortunate to have several Conservation Commissioners on hand to assist with the presentation. So with that, I'd like to invite Mina Kim up to the podium to introduce our first Sustainable Eden Prairie Award recipient in the energy category.
Good evening, my name is Mina Kim, and I'm a student member serving on the Conservation Commission. Our first recipient tonight is Bruce and Peggy Kavam, who are being recognized in the energy category. In mind with the seriousness of climate change, Bruce and Peggy Kavam designed and constructed their Eden Prairie home to be net zero energy and energy efficient. Key features of their home include PV solar array, 2-inch closed-cell spray foam, Energy Star appliances, energy management systems, including a smart thermostat and PV tracking, an electric water tank, triple pane windows, and much more. The Kavam House has also been recognized by the U.S. Department of Energy as a 2019 winner of the Housing Innovation Award in custom homes for buyers. Would Bruce and Peggy Kavam please come up to accept your award?
And now I'd like to ask Kirsten Orning to introduce the recipient for the landscaping category.
Good evening, my name is Kirsten Orning, and I'm a student commissioner serving on the Conservation Commission. Our second recipient tonight, I don't think she's here. Her name is Angela Dunn, and she's being recognized in the landscape category. Native landscapes provide a variety of environmental benefits, such as creating habitat for pollinators, providing erosion control, enhancing biodiversity, working as effective carbon sinks, and reducing the use of pesticides that pollute our waterways. Angela has worked diligently on restoring her front yard to native plants. She also volunteers her time by participating in Eden Prairie Park cleanup events and being a native seed donor to the local watershed district. I'd also like to add that she has chickens, and I just think that's really cool. Unfortunately, as I said before, she can't be here tonight, but she's here.
She's here.
Hi, Angela. If you want to come and get your award, that would be cool.
Next, I'd like to invite Rohin Giramirthy up to introduce our recipient in the water category.
Good evening. My name is Rohin Gurmurthy, also a student commissioner serving on the Conservation Commission. Tonight, we are recognizing Jen Heyer in the water category. Water is an essential resource. We use water on a daily basis for agriculture, cooking, cleaning, drinking, and much more. Public education on the importance of water quality and water conservation is essential to the health of our community and our environment. Jen Heyer is a teacher at Eden Prairie Cedar Ridge Elementary School and creator of Higher Learning. In 2019, Jen received the Presidential Innovation Award for Environmental Educators, awarded by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for a Wilderness Wednesday program, an outdoor-based environmental education program for children. Her classrooms have also participated in Eden Prairie's Adopt a Drain program, which helps protect our waterways by cleaning stored debris and litter. Would Jen Heyer please come up and accept your award?
And finally, I'd like to invite Abi Nalamali to introduce the last recipient in the waste category.
Good evening. My name is Abiram Nalamali, and I am the student member serving on the Conservation Committee. The final recipient we are recognizing tonight is Prop Food in the Waste category. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates 30 to 40% of our food supply goes to waste. Prop People Reaching Out to People is a nonprofit food shelf providing food to residents in Eden Prairie and Chanhassen. Prop accepts approximately 2,300 pounds of perishable food annually from 9 local grocery stores that would otherwise be sent to landfills. 85% of that food is redistributed. In June of 2019, Prop began composting organic waste by depackaging the products and recycling the containers. Prop has also developed recycling stations in their office with signage to help staff choose the correct disposal methods. Would the representatives from Prop, Cindy and Joanne, please come up and accept your award?
So in closing, I would just like to say congratulations to all of our award winners. Thank you to our Conservation Commission members who assisted with the presentation tonight. And I just want to finally add that there's a reception downstairs for our award winners, their guests, and the Conservation Commission members just down in the atrium. If you'd like to join us down there, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Really nice to have the students here this evening as well. So good move on that, the Conservation Commission. And thank you, all commissioners, for all that you do. We really appreciate your advice and recommendations and work that you're doing this year. So thank you.
Thank you.
Many residents of Eden Prairie that live around Flying Cloud Airport, especially ones that live underneath the runways either on the east and west side, are aware on a daily basis of the impacts if they fly in and out of there, positive and negative, of the airport. And in my conversations with Brian Ricks, who was so nice to go out to lunch with me at one point, and then our very own Eden Prairie chair now of the Metropolitan Airport Commission, Rick King, which we're so happy to have him in that position as well. But in my conversations with them, some of the questions that I had received from residents are along the line of, is the airport getting, I'm trying not to be pejorative here, but in terms of noise impacts, is it getting worse? Are we experiencing greater noise impacts than we had been over the years previously? And I was hoping that, and I'm so glad this evening to have the representatives from the Metropolitan Airport Commission here, hoping to have them come in and just kind of give us a baseline on where are we at today? Where are we at compared to where we thought we might be? Again, people that have been in the city quite a while and in government, running in government circles, know that in the late 90s, we actually were, let's see, never a formal lawsuit with the Metropolitan Airport Commission, but we were in a legal, trying to keep away from some words here, but not a battle. But anyway, we were in a conflict of sorts with the Metropolitan Airport Commission at the time because the airport was looking to expand, and we were concerned as a council over those years that if it did expand, that we still got some protections for the people of Eden Prairie, which we did. And that agreement was penned in 2002. Then, because 9/11 had occurred and then the Great Recession, some of the growth that I think that was possibly projected or expected out of 2002 did not occur back then and might be more occurring now. So that's kind of where the baseline that I was hoping they would come in. And Mr. King, Mr. Ricks, and I'm not sure who else is going to be speaking this evening, but if one of you would like to come up, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Happy to be here, Mr. Mayor, council members. Rick King. I am an Eden Prairie resident, been here for about 15 years and served for 6 years on the Flying Cloud Airport Commission before about 9 years ago, was appointed to the MAC, and just this last July, the governor appointed me to be chair of the MAC. So keeping Eden Prairie in mind the whole time. We love living here, so it's a wonderful city. Thank you for the opportunity to come and talk. I'm just going to be very brief. Wanted to introduce to you somebody who also came from the Flying Cloud Airport Commission and is the new MAC commissioner for this district, replacing the position that I vacated, Braj Agrawal. He'll come up in just a minute. I think we're going to be able to quickly go through both mine and Braj's remarks, and we'll get to Joe Harris, who is the director of Reliever Airports. He was a former manager of the Flying Cloud Airport, is very familiar with the operators and the people, so he'll speak. And then Dana Nelson, who has now more of a public affairs role, but previously has been very intimately involved in residential issues, noise complaints, things like that. I believe you'll get all the statistics that we discussed that will bring up hopefully good discussion. And whenever you lay out the facts, it's a great start for conversations. So I think this will hopefully be helpful. We'll all be around, including the CEO, Brian Ricks, for any questions that you have after. So with that, I'll thank you again and call on Braj to make a couple comments.
Thank you, Braj. I meant to introduce you. We're so happy to have another Eden Prairie resident involved here. So, and thanks for all your service too on our Flying Cloud Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. I just got appointed in September to the MAC, and as Chair King mentioned, if anyone has any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to any of us. But I am the District B representative, and feel free to reach out. And from there, I'd like to introduce Joe Harris.
Thank you, Braj.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barrage. As Dana brings up the presentation, good evening, Mayor Case, members of the council. It's an honor to be before you this evening to have a conversation around Flying Cloud Airport. Again, my name is Joe Harris, and I serve as the Director of Reliever Airports. I'd like to introduce Dana Nelson, Dana will be joining me this evening to tag team this, and she's our Director of Stakeholder Engagement at the MAC. MAC has placed a lot of emphasis on growing our community engagement, and Dana and her team are doing some really great things in this particular focus area. I would like to start by saying that the Flying Cloud Airport users are extremely proud to be part of your wonderful community. I mean, Eden Prairie is really second to none as far as communities in the metro area. Many airport users live and work in Hennepin County. Flying Cloud serves as the front door to many guests. Dedicated airport practitioners are dedicated to making a great first and last impression for many visitors. Flying Cloud is home to renowned businesses providing a complement of aviation services such as charter, flight training, maintenance, fueling, just to highlight a few. Flying Cloud is MAC's busiest reliever airport. It ranks third busiest in the state and is home to more than 350 aircraft. Flying Cloud is classified as a minor use airport. We have a total of 3 runways. The longest runway is 5,000 feet in length, which allows aircraft to reach both east and west coast destinations non-stop. In 2017, the MAC conducted an environmental or an economic impact study of the reliever airport system prepared by Intervestis. Now, Flying Cloud might be small relative to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, but it has an outside impact on our local area economy. 340 jobs at the airport are directly tied to airport operations, producing $18 million in direct wages. Visitor spending is estimated at $18.4 million, and airport tenants pay taxes into the city, county, and local school district. The airport location in relation to area businesses makes it attractive. Businesses of all sizes use airplanes to enhance productivity. Forward-thinking organizations use business aircraft to minimize travel time, especially to regional markets that have limited or no commercial air service to remain competitive in today's marketplace. One of our locally owned businesses, Aviation Charter, specializes in life-saving flight services, such as emergency organ and blood transfers. Unfortunately, due to the critical nature and time sensitivities of these flights, they may operate during late and early night hours. Our airport users are always willing to lend a helping hand for humanitarian support. For example, volunteer pilots will transfer ill patients to one of Minnesota's world-class hospitals for treatment by utilizing empty seats on aircraft. Now, the airport, Flying Cloud, is so much more than a place than just where aircraft take off and land. MAC is proud of our relationship with community organizations in providing space for activities on airport land not needed for aeronautical purposes, such as the Flying Cloud ball fields, the Boy Scout Christmas tree sales lot, and community gardens. The airport is also home to education centers to wit, such as the Minnesota Aviation Hall of Fame and the Wings of the North Air Museum. MAC has always enjoyed connecting with airport neighbors to raise the profile of the airport. The annual Air Expo event in July attracted 5,000 people. In September, more than 2,400 of the next generation of female aviation professionals attended Girls in Aviation Day. This event was a massive success and continues to grow. The video that is playing on your screen is of a Paint the Plow activity at Girls in Aviation Day at the MAC booth. As you very well know, Flying Cloud Parade played a pivotal role in some recent large-scale sporting events for our Twin Cities area, namely the Ryder Cup, Super Bowl, and Final Four. So Mayor Case, members of the council, please accept my sincere, deep appreciation for the excellent city staff, assistance, and expertise in the promotion of safe airport operation. The city of Eden Prairie is a pivotal partner for us. And I'm confident with Dana leading our stakeholder engagement, we will continue to enhance the relationship between our airport users and your community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Again, my name is Dana Nelson, and I am here this evening to give an update on the airport operations and some of the noise trends that we have been seeing. And I want to thank Mayor Case for forwarding some of those questions to us. The goal here today is to give to you a perspective of airport operations and noise trends that we've been seeing. And just so you know, we have a team of people at the MAC who are dedicated to working with the communities around all of our airports, as well as the Federal Aviation Administration and pilots, to find opportunities to alleviate noise concerns for the communities surrounding our airports. I'd like to begin first with an overall high-level view of the operational trends that we see at Flying Cloud Airport. This is reported by the Federal Aviation Administration Air Traffic Control Tower, and this is dating back to 2004. You can see for the number of operations, and an operation is either a takeoff or a landing at Flying Cloud Airport. They have decreased overall since 2004, and in the past 4 to 5 years, they've really stabilized around 85 to 90,000 operations on an annual basis. This chart again is using FAA air traffic control counts. The next charts that I'm going to go through are using our MAC noise and operations monitoring system data. Using that data, we're able to dig a little bit deeper into the operational trends. We can tell what kind of aircraft are operating, times of day, down to the month. And so the next slides are going to use that source of data. In order to compare year-to-date information to 2019, I've only focused this presentation on January through September, going back to 2014. And this chart is showing by aircraft family the number of and percentage of operations that we've seen through that January through September timeframe. The largest portion of the operations are in the green bar, what we call unknown aircraft types. These are known operations at Flying Cloud. However, for our flight tracking system, they don't come through with identified aircraft types. You can see that they've started to decrease beginning in 2017, and that's because there's a federal mandate to equip aircraft with certain technology on board so that it does many things, but one of the things it does is it allows us to identify the aircraft types more often. What we see is the reduction in those unknown aircraft types are getting reclassified into the piston type aircraft. And there's examples of these aircraft families on the left. The piston is the next most common one. And this, what is shown here is a single engine Cessna 172, but it may also include a twin engine piston driven aircraft, which is going to be shown in blue. That was about 27% of the aircraft operations year to date 2017. Jet operations account for about 11 to 15% of the operations, and turboprops are about 10%. And then at the top of the bar is helicopter operations with less than 1%. Looking a little bit deeper into the jet operations, as I know that is often a question that we receive, this chart shows back to 2014, again, January through September, the total aircraft operations in white, jets below 60,000 pounds in yellow, and jets above 60,000 pounds in green. Some of the corporate activity that Joe had mentioned use these types of aircraft to transport personnel to and from Flying Cloud to all areas all over the United States. We talk about jets. I think it's also important to note that Flying Cloud doesn't have commercial service at the airport, and there's no scheduled airline service, and it's not MAC's intent to make Flying Cloud Airport a commercial service or cargo airport. The reason
By the way, just a point of reference there, that's in our agreement from 2002 that it never become a scheduled service airport. So appreciate that MAC will abide by that as well as we will. So
Thank you, Mayor. The reason why we call out the 60,000 pound weight too is in our final agreement, as we have Ordinance 97, which restricts these types of aircraft operations. And the process that we have, we work through the Flying Cloud Airport Advisory Commission to identify and notify these operators above max gross weight of 60,000 pounds every time they land at Flying Cloud Airport. We send a letter to the operator, and the letter includes the tail number, the date and time of their operation. It also includes a description of Ordinance 97, as well as some alternative airport options for them to consider in the area. We provide a report of these letters to the Flying Cloud Airport Advisory Commission at each of its meetings.
Dina, what happens if like a month later they're back again? Another letter, and what if a month after that they're back again?
Mayor Case and council members, we have some that have received multiple letters, and Joe and I have worked with them closely to educate them on the importance of Ordinance 97 and the final agreement. We have great relationships with the tenants on the airfield, and so I think that's a really good opportunity for us to interface with them and explain why we have these important rules in place.
But there's not a lot of teeth to it.
Mayor and council members, at this point, I mean, I think according to the final agreement, there is language that the city and the MAC will work together on kind of that next step if we were to consider that. And I think that's a really great conversation that we're willing to sit down with the city, whether it be yourself, Mayor, or council members, to have that conversation.
That would be great, thank you. And I don't want to get too deep in the weeds, but I understand there are issues between the operator of the plane, the owner of the plane, the leasee of the plane, I mean, and getting the letter to the right entity is difficult. Is that part of the issue as well?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and council members, that is true, yes. So moving on, looking at, again, a different view of the jet operations. These are the top 10 most frequent jets that we see at Flying Cloud Airport. The Citation 560 XL or Citation XL is the most frequent jet that we see at the airport, followed by Hawker 400, which is also called a beach jet. All of these aircraft that you see on this slide are considered small to medium size corporate aircraft with seats ranging from 4 to 12 passenger seats. In the case of the Citation Mustang, which is shown on the bottom with the purple corresponding line on the bottom, has 4 seats, so that's kind of the smaller scale. To the Citation Sovereign, which is shown in the light green color, that has up to 12 passenger seats. A lot of people that we talk with have an idea that a larger jet aircraft is often noisier, and that's not always the case, and those 2 aircraft are good examples of why that may not be the case. The Citation Mustang has a certificated noise level, so any time an aircraft goes through a certification process with the FAA, they go through a series of tests, and one of those is a flyover noise level test. The Citation Mustang has a flyover noise level of 71.9 decibels, and then the larger Sovereign, which has about 10 more seats, has a 2 decibels quieter flyover level. So it's not extreme. 2 decibels is barely perceptible to the human ear. However, it's just one example that shows that it's not always the case that the larger aircraft is going to be the louder one. The last thing I'll say about this slide is while the chart shows that there are quite a few, it looks like there are quite a few operations at the airport, the Citation and the Hawker both account for about 2% of the total operations at Flying Cloud. Another look at the operations is taking a look at when they occur over the course of an average day. What we find is that most of the operations are occurring between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. In fact, 90% of the operations at Flying Cloud are happening during these daytime hours. Additionally, this is where we see some of the increases. This chart compares 2014 in blue with 2018 and 2019. And we see most of the increases from 2014 kind of in that daytime period. At night, anytime after 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m. is really where Joe and I focus our outreach to the airport operators and tenants to explain to them the agreements in the voluntary noise abatement plan, which includes requests for them to refrain from operating during these nighttime hours.
Dana, quick question.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand myself, as I'm sure other council members, that we've received seemingly, maybe not formal issues with the airport, but definitely informal, more and more complaints. And if back in the control room, if you'll go back to that last slide, not me, and if you go from 2014 to 2018, there's quite a spike. So I guess I'm looking for evidence and data that, yes, it is reasonable that we might be experiencing additional noise, especially the evening hours. It's 3 to 4 times. I realize there's just a handful of flights in there, but if it went from 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, that's a big deal when windows are open in the evening in the summer, and jet wakes you up at 2:15 and wakes everybody up in about 1,000 homes in that area. That's a big deal. So this graph, I think, does go a long ways toward explaining that people's sense of intuition that the airport's gotten a little bit noisier based on just jet traffic. I realize that's just a small portion, but it's an important, loud, small portion. It's a true perception. Is that fair?
Mr. Mayor and council members, there's no doubt that they have increased. The number of jet operations has increased since 2014. Again, it's not always going to be, everybody's going to be concerned about jet operations because jets tend to get up and out of the airport environment very quickly. They're high-performing aircraft. They're not going to be doing pattern work, and some people that we talk to around the airport are concerned more with that traffic pattern, kind of repetitive activity. But no doubt there has been an increase in the jet activity, which may be resulting in the increased concerns that you've been hearing.
Sure. Thanks,
So,
David.
quick question on the outside of the normal day operations in terms of the agreement. Any chance that any of those are medical related and therefore that's why they're operating?
Yes. Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Aho, that yes, there are some operations that, as Joe mentioned, the organ donor and transfusion patients, they do operate during very odd hours of the night. There are also some occasions where some pilot training is needed during the nighttime hours, and what we see is during the summertime when the days are longer, those nighttime recurrent training requirements on pilots tend to get pushed into the later hours or earlier morning hours because they need to do it when the sun is down. So those are just some examples of what we've been seeing for nighttime operations. Additionally, if really between the shoulder hours, 10 p.m. to midnight, we see quite a few arrivals from West Coast. So because of the time differences, we have some arrivals coming in kind of during that shoulder period after a full day of work.
Thank you.
Question. Looking at this graph, do you have another graph eliminating the medical aircraft coming in and out? Because that's an exception to me. You know, if somebody really need an organ transplanted from A to B, you have to do that. But when we look at this, we should look at both ways without that, so we can know what is the effect of that versus not having that. Do you have any understanding of that?
I don't, Mr. Mayor and Council Member, I don't have a chart, but I'm happy to pull that and send that along with a copy of the presentation if the council would like.
Are most of the medical flights, however, piggybacking on top of flights that are already going out? There's a couple companies that fly regularly for business, and they bring along organs if they're needed or available, but there aren't a lot of flights that are just purely medical flights, are there?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to look to Joe on that one.
Mr. Mayor, council members, yes, there is a dedicated operator at Flying Cloud that all they do is specialize in organ donor and blood transfusion. So there is an enormous amount of operations specific.
That would be good then, to your point, Councilmember Narayan, to disaggregate that data out, at least for FYIs.
Just a clarification, how big is that number in a day? It's a 5 or 50? 100
The medical flights alone?
medical flights? alone?
Yeah, Mr. Case, council member, it varies because it's
Average? What's the average?
it's a very busy operation. I would say on average, weighted out, it's around 10
Thank you.
per day, not necessarily all early morning, but it's a very busy operation.
Thank you. Keep, Dana, proceed.
I
Thank
have
you.
one more question on that graph. So we see the graph going up. What is your maximum capacity could go up? Right now you are, 2.5 per hour? Am I seeing that right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and
How
council
far you
members.
can go up based on your 3 runways and mix of traffic? So potentially it could go up the noise up to that level, then no capacity, right? Do you know what that level is?
I don't know what the total capacity of the airport is, but I can say it's quite a bit more than what we're seeing today.
Just look back at that, one of those original charts where it showed the number of operations,
Went
you know,
down.
over time, and we're way
down.
down from 2000, what was it, 10 levels or 2008 levels, whatever
It's our
it was.
jet traffic that's up, though. And to your point, there are people that may here and there complain about all kinds of traffic, helicopter as an example. But I would say, and I live down near the airport, so I think I experience more of the comments and complaints. I would say 9 out of 10 people, it's jet traffic, it's jets. And they have a sense and a perception that jet traffic has increased, and your graph is showing that that's true.
All right, Mr. Mayor and council members, the next look is kind of at the same information, nighttime activity, just looking at it in a different way. This is showing the total nighttime operations. We account about 5% of the total operations are during that 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. time period, and then the jet nighttime activity is about a little over 1% on an annual basis. The next chart shows operations by month dating back to January 2014. You can see that there are seasonal trends. We peak in the summertime, and that's not just true for Flying Cloud, but it's also true at all of our airports, including MSP. It's also the time when we're outside more, we have the windows open more, and so our complaint trends follow that same cyclical pattern. We have some of the major sporting events that Joe had mentioned pointed out here with the Ryder Cup, Super Bowl, and Final Four really leading to increases that we saw at Flying Cloud and all of our airports. Flying Cloud played a really important role during those events. Now, moving on to aircraft noise complaints and complaint locations. The number of noise complaints over the past 10 years are shown on this chart in blue, along with the number of locations filing a noise complaint in orange, and the corresponding scale to the right side for aircraft noise complaint locations. Of note is 2011, we saw a peak in aircraft noise complaints. This was mainly driven by one location filing 45% of the noise complaints. This is typically true, what we see at all of our airports and really at other airports across the country is when there are outliers, it's usually driven by one or a few individuals. The process that we take with Flying Cloud complaints is, I think, important here because we have the commitments that we've made in the final agreement to investigate noise complaints and to understand if there were any operations that were not following the agreement. And so the noise complaints really become the first step for us to initiate that investigation process. And so we look at our flight tracking system, we talk with the FAA, we talk with the airport manager to understand what was occurring, reach out to the airport operator or owner where we're able to identify them and let them know that they're operating inconsistently with the restraints that we have on the airport. We also keep a record of all of these letters that we send out, and we work with the Flying Cloud Airport Advisory Commission to share that information with them.
Can I ask a quick question? Based upon what you just said, 45% of those complaints, which looks like 4,000, I think is the number I saw. The screen's not up right now. 45%, 1,800 complaints came from one source. Just, I'm going to 45%. Five complaints a day?
Mr. Mayor and Council Member,
From
that's,
one person?
That's correct, or one household. We don't know if it's one person in that household. What we do with the those who rise to the top of the number of complaints that we receive at our airport is we reach out to them on a regular basis to see if they would like to talk with us, better understand the airport, maybe even come and visit the airport to learn about what is going on and let us learn about what their major concerns are.
So you're talking to this person on a daily basis, 5 times a day maybe?
I
guess I'm trying to grab around that. That sounds like just a bizarre number.
Mr. Mayor and council members, 90% of our noise complaints come through our office via the internet. So they're able to file a noise complaint through our website, and most of them come through that way.
Because I'm just visualizing someone just dialing up all the time. Yeah.
I have a question as well. In the noise complaint, you may get so many per year. Have you looked at that complaint, what hour they're complaining, or just general? Do they say generally that, hey, it's noise going up, or it's a 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm hearing noise a lot more louder than before? Any indication of by hour that changes?
Mr. Mayor and council members, yes, there has been, I would say, an increase just overall in daytime and nighttime hours. It's not specifically at night, and it's not specifically during the day. There are also trends that we follow, whether they are new complainers or not new complainers, and we see a healthy mix of both. The next slide that I was going to get into really compares the complaints with what was occurring at that time. So using our flight tracking system to correlate each complaint with the actual aircraft that likely generated that complaint. And so those are trends that we follow closely so that we can understand better which aircraft types are people most concerned about.
PG, though, I think what you were asking is there a correlation between the complaint and a specific operation?
Right.
And I think that there is it's by operation typically, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what we do see. There are certain aircraft types, and you can really see it showcased on this slide. There are certain aircraft types that kind of stand out to people and generate the most complaints. And the Beechcraft King Air, which is the second on the list under the unknown aircraft types, is one of those that kind of stand out to people, whether it be the noise signature of the aircraft, which is very unique. It's a turboprop aircraft, and so it tends to have a low frequency kind of rumbling noise. And this is the aircraft that is used for that organ transfer activity. Some of the operators also operate this early in the morning if they're going to areas of northern Minnesota on a business trip. We see this aircraft depart around the 6:30 a.m. time frame. And so I think the combination of all of those things are what lead people to register noise complaints, particularly for this aircraft type. If you look toward the middle of this list, it's also a Beech King Air. It's a different rendition of it, but similar statistics that we see. So this chart, or this table, is just showing which aircraft types and which families are generating the most complaints that we see. We see a combination of twin turboprop, jet, single engine, twin piston aircraft, the number of operations that occurred during a 12-month period ending October 2019, the number of complaints that we've received correlated to that aircraft type during that same time period, and then the ratio between the operations per complaint.
I have another question. Do you have a way actively measuring the noise 24 hours, every 5 seconds, every 5 minutes, somewhere through some electronic
Mr. Mayor and council members, we do an annual noise contour as part of our long-term comprehensive plans for the airport. And
so that's just one-time measurement?
Yes.
Not on like a daily basis or every hour, some IoT device they are sending data to somewhere. And actual, the noise level, and then you can correlate to what the complaints are, right?
The noise contour is using a federal prescripted software program, so it's not actually taking noise measurements from equipment that we have, but it is using the aircraft operations at the airport and plugging it into an aviation environmental design tool, which is prescribed by the Federal Aviation Administration that airports must use for evaluating noise kind of signatures around an airport.
So do you do that once a year? Did I hear you there?
We do it every time we do a long-term comprehensive plan, which is about every 10 years for the airport.
So you don't have we don't have a way to validate a resident's complaint, say on particular day, Saturday, 8 o'clock, I heard so much noise, and you cannot look back to some instrument said, there must be some other noise, not from the airport, right? Because my instruments show this much dB noise coming up. You don't have a way to do that.
Well, the problem is that, it's not, the noise isn't only at the airport. it's so if you have, sensors at the airport, that's not going to tell you what the noise experience is for the resident that's complaining, right?
Understand. So it has to be multiple places.
Right.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, council members, I have two things to respond to that. One is there are requirements in the final agreement for nighttime run-up operations. And in order for us to understand what is occurring at the airport, we do have a noise monitor that we have on the airfield that we use to investigate some of those complaints that come through specifically about nighttime run-up operations, and then we can go and listen to the activity recorded on that noise meter. The second thing is because of the requirements for gathering noise across all directions of the airport, it does become pretty exhaustive to be able to deploy that type of equipment. However, as I mentioned before, the Aviation Environmental Design Tool is a tool that we have to be able to use different aircraft or noise metrics to see what is occurring around the airport. It doesn't have to be those noise contours that I had talked about. In fact, we're using that tool in different ways around MSP to understand what is occurring and what would occur if something changed. And so I think we've got some flexibility in that tool now. It's fairly new, and we've got some staff members who are well versed in it. And so we're able to do some different things to help with validating or just explaining what is occurring around the airport at a higher fidelity.
Yeah, I was just amazed that advancement in technology that we still cannot measure 10 different spots or 30 different spots cost effectively and truly understand the noise every 5 minutes or every 5 seconds, and able to analyze that data and truly reflect to the complaint. So we can say, well, that's not true, or it is true, and then you can take action on it. It's coming if you don't have it.
And this is my last slide. This is showing the same information, just breaking out the nighttime after 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m., the number of operations complaints and the operations per complaint. No surprise, there are fewer operations. However, the ratio operations per complaint is quite a bit lower because of the extra intrusiveness of those operations occurring. So with that, Mr. Mayor and council members, we are happy to stand for any additional questions.
I have one more hard one. So what's your prediction next year? Is noise going to be up? Noise going to be down? We get more complaints?
Mr. Mayor and council members, That is a tricky one, and we actually have tried to take a look at predictive technology for noise complaints and haven't gotten there, just because it really depends on some of the human factor elements, how often people are going to be outside because of the nice weather. In terms of the airport operations, I think we will continue to see around that 85,000, 88,000 operations per year mark. I don't think we're expecting to see a significant increase, but we do expect to see that staying consistent. I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add to that, Joe.
What about, you know, we talk about number of operations, but what about the profile of the aircraft that are using the airport? Do you see a significant change in what type of aircraft? So in other words, obviously older aircraft get retired and newer aircraft come online, and my sense is that the newer aircraft are typically more fuel efficient and more and quieter operating type aircraft. Is that kind of what you're seeing, and kind of, do you have any sense of what that's doing?
Mr. Mayor and council members, I would agree. There is an evolution going on, and you can really see it right now with the commercial aircraft that we're seeing with newer, quieter technology that some of the airlines are bringing about. For general aviation airports like Flying Cloud, that technology tends to trail a little bit the commercial activity. However, there is an upgrade in the sophistication that the corporate aviation folks are operating, and those tend to be the quieter, more fuel efficient, higher bypass ratio engines. And so I think there is going to be a tendency toward those types of aircraft with corporate activity and general aviation activity. However, it becomes a little bit more cumbersome for them to change out their aircraft family as easily as the big airline operations.
I have a follow-up question to Brad. So when the technology changes, I'm assuming the CO2 emission also decrease versus old aircraft versus new aircraft. Is that true? Do we have a way of measuring? Do we know how much CO2 output putting out? Is that a typical measurement in an airport?
It's by plane.
Mr. Mayor and council members, there are measurements that we do for anytime we do like a federal National Environmental Policy Act kind of document. So if we are going to do any kind of change or improvement at the airport that requires federal funding, those typically come with requirements to do an environmental review. And so those would be occasions where we would go out and do some either monitoring or modeling. Again, we have some tools in our toolbox to be able to model some of that, looking at the fleet of aircraft at the airport, what kind of carbon emissions or kind of air quality statistics can we pull from that. And so we don't do it on a regular basis, but it is often part of our environmental reviews.
So in overall, are we decreasing the CO2 emission, or we steady because number of flights are reduced, right? So I'm assuming it is decreasing.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members, yes. When you look at the overall number of operations, that's really going to be the main driver. The new technology aircraft are also going to be a main driver in that reduction.
Thank you. Thank you so
I got
much.
a question if I could. I'm going to go back to this scenario right now where 45% of the complaints come from one source. You indicated that that's very common with airports. Mm-hmm. Is there any type of proactive approach you can take to just remedy? It seems like such a waste of manpower, man-hours, as far as to monitor it year in, year out. I got a feeling this has gone on for a lot of years. And I'm just wondering, in the long view of things, is there ever a plan to, let's eliminate, the problem? I'm sure I got too simple as far as when I said that, you know, as far as the way I was putting it, but there just seems to be some way of being proactive, like, okay, if it's that big a deal, maybe there's a way that we don't.
Council member and mayor, you know, that was 1 year in that chart.
Okay.
And I think what Dana was saying also was that occasionally we see in aberration type years in all kinds of airports, an individual will move in or and maybe not know the airport was there or not realize the noise was going to be there knowing the airport was there. And you get that kind of activity, but it as you see that chart, it only happened that 1 year. So I wouldn't suggest that that's something we should look at. What we do is we deal with it and we talk to the person, and I think we should always talk to the people. We should try to resolve, try to educate, do our best. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, that's the staff does a good job with that, and I wouldn't want them to stop. You do think after a time, boy, I don't know if I can say that same thing to again, because I can't give them the peace that they want. Yeah. But I think having the dialogue is the best we can do as, you know, in our official capacity, so we'll continue to do that. But I wouldn't want to focus on that too much because it's really only an aberration in that 1 year. I'm sure we might see it again, but we haven't since 11, I think.
Thank you very much.
So let's see, is there anything else to finally say, or I've got some comments to make as well, and we may have additional questions. Maybe don't go away for a moment. I just want to give anyone that's listening from out in, not in this room, from watching on TV, or anyone that's in the room tonight, there's really only, I guess, two of us, Mr. Rosso and me, that go back into the 90s when we actually were dealing legally with the issues that brought us to the final agreement. And I hope the final agreement sounds as final as the final agreement sounds. In the late 90s, we're operating under an ordinance called Ordinance 51, which at the time we believed prohibited ever expanding the runway from, I think, 3,700 feet or 50 feet or something. And we learned when the Metropolitan Airport Commission came and said, no, we have, with legislative authority, we have the power to expand to 5,000 feet. We thought we could take our Ordinance 51 into court, and we learned that Ordinance 51 was not a legally binding document. And so at that point, we got into negotiations with the Metropolitan Airport Commission, and this council in 1997 appointed the mayor and a council member. I was the council member, Mayor Gene Harris, and we began probably more like 98 into 99, a couple-year negotiations process. The city of Eden Prairie did not have, if people are wondering, like, why didn't we come in stronger, spend more money? We did not have a strong legal position at all. State legislature has empowered, just like in watershed districts, Metropolitan Airport Commission empowered them because they're responsible for not only MSP, but also the seven, right? Six relievers, and because they have regional impacts, they needed to have to be empowered to make decisions regionally. So, in fact, people don't realize this, that Metropolitan Airport Commission has zoning power over the cities that it is, and though they often will come back nicely to pull the cities in and engage us in that. So we learned pretty quickly we did not have, I guess, the power that we thought we did, but nonetheless we had some political leverage. We ended up in an agreement that we agreed to withdraw our opposition to the expansion to 5,000 feet if we got some things inside what is now a legal agreement. That Ordinance 51 was not, this new Ordinance 97 is. We got the weight restriction at 60,000 pounds per aircraft. We have runway depth. That's an important part of this, because if you want to increase aircraft, and especially as technology allows aircraft to land on shorter runways but be heavier, the pavement depth is definitely a limiting factor. The 5,000-foot runway is legislative, but nonetheless, we believe that's something that we would have support, I hope, from the Metropolitan Airport Commission to keep that contained to 5,000 feet. One of the most positively impactful pieces that we got from that agreement was a ban on nighttime run-ups. And nighttime run-ups, at the time, a couple of the FBOs, the fixed-based operators up at the airport, had 3 shifts, I think, of 24/7 operations, and they were going out at night, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. When they do maintenance on planes, they go out to the runway and they run them up at full power. And it's not, I'm not a pilot, but it's not what pilots do, where they go out and they just test and run it up for whatever they do, 10 or 20 seconds. If you're doing a maintenance run-up, they'd run them up for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. At 2 o'clock in the morning, it was tremendously noisy. So we have a ban on that from 10 o'clock to 7 a.m. at night. By the way, you might be wondering, why don't we just ban any nighttime aircraft flying in and out of there from 10 o'clock until 7? That's an FAA rule. FAA controls completely the airspace in this nation, and they do not allow airports to limit flights in or out. They allow that judgment to be part of the pilot. I believe there's only 2 airports in the nation that do have it, and that's Washington National because of all the DC issues, and I think Orange County, John Wayne. I think those are the only 2. Many airports have attempted to join that group. That's not going to happen. So we don't control any of the ability to limit planes coming in and out. So my only question, and I guess that I'm sure the residents that are concerned about this, I mean, we have a lot of pilots in the city that love that airport. I understand that. There's people maybe living even up north that aren't as exposed to the constant impact of people, of the 5, 6, 10,000 people that live underneath the runways. But I think the people that are negatively impacted would like to know, well, what can we do? And the answer is not a lot, but it feels like a little. And I think, Joe and Dana, I think you hinted at little bits. But one would be, could we be more aggressive? Could we find ways to be more aggressive with the current non-compliant overweight planes? And that might be more letters, more contact. Could the city participate in that? I'm not sure, signing on, but just to really help educate. The other thing is that the tower closes at 10 p.m., and so after that, any plane that's coming in or out is under the control of the tower at MPS, correct? MSP, sorry.
Yeah, I was kidding. I'm sorry. The tower closes actually at 9 o'clock now.
Okay, 9
we just
o'clock.
switched, but 10 p.m. in the summer. But yeah.
So my point is that might there be some of these nighttime jet traffic that it's not as knowledgeable about some of the flight patterns and the contours, and because the MSP airport tower is controlling, they might not be as engaged. And so could we become more engaged with the nighttime traffic? They're very identifiable. There's not that many. Could we send letters out? Could we find out if they're flying out in airspace that's not as preferable or as compliant or as positive as could be for our residents? I'd like to know that. I have heard, just because in the summer especially, I happened on rare occasion to be out about 6 to 6:15 in my yard, and I heard run-ups. So I think they're squeaking on that 7 o'clock piece of it. I'd like to tighten up on that. So there's things I think that we can be working at more aggressively to try to hit at the most trying to keep away from obnoxious, but the most obnoxious noise. I think there are things. Cub Scouts, I was going to introduce you momentarily. I know you need to leave, but if you could just hang on 2 minutes. After, you know what? We'll introduce you now. Can we just pause for a moment? Can we turn the cameras? We've got Cub Scout Pack 342 from Prairie View here, and I promised them they'd be on TV for a couple of seconds here. So if you guys can wave back there, really appreciate you coming tonight. I hope this was half interesting about it was to us, but so we appreciate you coming. Thank you so much. All right, back to, thanks a lot for that. Back to Metropolitan Airport Commission. So council, I don't want to, this has accomplished the objectives I wanted initially, that we just level set, that we found out about some data, that we met these good people that came out. I will say this, of all the years, gosh, and I've had 25 years now of interaction with the Metropolitan Airport Commission. I've never had the positive relationships as I have, but also this council with the people that are representative in here this evening. And I actually appreciate the leadership prior to you, Brian, but you've been fantastic, so thank you very much. And we had, even during our most contentious time in the late 90s, Tim Anderson, I mean, there were others that we just deeply respected, disagreed maybe on fundamental issues about airport impact, impact. But so we appreciate you being here, and Braj and Rick, especially being Eden Prairie residents. I think our ability to have a liaison connection to you is amazing. So council, maybe just a couple more moments without spending a ton of time, but any pressing questions, we can always ask them later as well.
Just want to say thank you. Really appreciate answering all the good questions.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here. We appreciate the information. It's good to, knowledge is power, as we say, and it's good to have more knowledge about what the airport operations are doing and what's happening in the industry. I think that's always important. It's good to look at that, and we just appreciate your time and willingness to come before us, and we look forward to a great relationship as continuing.
Thank you very much for coming out and answering those questions. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Do you have any final words,
Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank you and thank the council. I think since the years I've been involved, we've had a good open relationship and dialogue, and I think that's really important. I think some of the things that you've mentioned, particularly if you want to look at what's the next step in the 60,000 pound or over, that's something in the final agreement that calls for both of us to put our heads together, figure out what the next thing would be, so we can certainly do that. We're happy to do that. I think that being more prescriptive with the people that are in the nighttime flying, when we would hope they would adhere to the voluntary curfew. We are writing them letters every single time. We do talk to them if there's multiple violations. So we are on a pretty good regime there. We don't get a tremendous number of repeat people there, but we deal with them when we can. So that's part of the final agreement too, which I would just conclude on and say, look, since that final agreement was there, that's the Bible by which is the minimum that we've got to do in terms of the protections, and we've made sure we do that. I think the city's felt the same way, and we've worked a lot of good things around that, for which we're all very appreciative, and we're appreciative of you allowing us to have the time to share the data, and happy to deal with any follow-up questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to do this, I don't know about how regularly, but at least once a year. It would be nice to bring you all in. We really appreciate your time. Thanks, Joe,
Thank you.
Dana, Rick, Ryan, Braj. Okay, excellent. All right, Mr. Getchell, we have a donation this evening. This is really, really special.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We have a donation from our city attorney, so I'm going to turn things over to him to explain the donation, and then the council needs to take action to accept the donation.
Preliminarily, I'd just like to say, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that I'm almost sorry I named it the final agreement.
That's right, that is you, isn't it?
But here tonight, I was hoping that Vicki could join me, but she was with one of the outreach ministries of our church tonight, and we want to give a donation of $1,500 to the city for its inclusionary housing program. We've both been involved for a long time in housing ministries at our church, a third way network where you put in sweat labor, both volunteered with Habitat. We housed in our home a refugee family for 3 years. They started out with one child and left with 3. And all of those have been great experiences. And one of the pleasures I have as your city attorney is to work with your staff on so many wonderful projects. And as I tell everybody, Eden Prairie is my favorite client. But what you don't know is I've told some of the departments they're my favorite department. And I've told that to more than one. And I've also told them don't tell the other department because they think they're the favorite department. But I've seen two things prompted tonight's donation. One, we see all the donations that Parks and Rec gets. And I don't begrudge them any one of those because you have a fantastic park system and it's wonderful that the community comes to support your parks. But you also have a wonderful community development department. And Vicki and I really take pride that to the extent I'm involved to help assist in that effort of bringing housing where it's needed. It's been a great joy as part of my practice to do that. And I'm honored to be your city attorney for many reasons, and that's one of them. So the second item that brought it to my mind was when we were considering as a city to do the Habitat project, Janet Jeremiah asked me very casually at a meeting, well, it's a tight budget, would you consider doing it pro bono? And I said, yes, I would. And we started on that path, and the project didn't get the other funding it needed, so we couldn't do that project. And so I thought, as I'm reaching the end of a term, what is it that we could do? And we decided to make this donation. So I have one other thing that I want to say, and that's that I've thought that $1,500 isn't a lot. So I want to do a matching challenge tonight. And I only thought of it tonight. I'm rather spontaneous, so while you were talking about airplanes, I emailed Vicki and said, what do you think if we match the next $1,500 with our $1,500, another $1,500, but from 60 people giving $25 each, so that it brings into this inclusionary housing fund a total of $4,500. And I limit it to 20, you can give more than $25 as an individual, but we'll match the first 25 you do from 60 people, because it does take a community to come together to do this work. And I'd love to encourage more people in the community, Eden Prairie residents, not a Minneapolis resident like me. We're not going to let any of those people meet the challenge or the match. I want Eden Prairie people, because you're wonderful people. I've been so proud to be able to be your city attorney. And I know people will respond. And I'm sure that staff will come up with a way to promote that and see if we can raise a total of $4,500 for this. So we're pleased to make the donation. Thank you for all that you've given us over the years, because it's been an important part of our life to be a part of your community. So thank you.
Wow. Well, I have to say something, but wow. First thing is Kathy and I will gladly give the first 25 each there. I'm sure others here will join that. So you've got some up here already.
Third. I'm in too, yes, of course.
I'm sure Kathy is also. This Kathy. My Kathy and I are, and this Kathy is as well. Oh, did I say something even funnier or no? So for the residents, people here, people listening, Mr. Rosso, our city attorney, is retiring at the end of this year. Having been with us 25 years? More. But as our full attorney, though, since, because Roger was here up and through 96 or 7.
Yeah. So about, since 2001.
Okay, so about 8. Oh, so but 40 some as some form of
as either the assistant
wow.
or the yeah.
So I mean, your impact with our city is incredible, and I just want to say that we as a city have been so fortunate. I don't often use the word blessed, but I think it fits here to have Rick Rosso represent our city legally in a legal format. I've always thought of you as a man of integrity and passion and conviction, and tonight just illustrated that completely. I just want you to know that we, the people of Eden Prairie, are better for your having been here, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, and we will miss you being here with us every month, every meeting, and we certainly will miss your historical knowledge of all the events that took place. I mean, you really bridge the gap between what's happened in the past and what's coming forward in the future, and none of us, I mean, even Ron doesn't have that much.
I'm not that old, no.
Have that much history. So thank you. Well, we might call you once in a while.
That would be very welcome.
You know, Rick, I'm going to miss those interactions you and I had when I was on the Planning Commission. And when I decided to challenge you a little bit, and you kept your cool and you gave me good answers, and I greatly appreciated that, and I learned. You know, thank you. I'm going to miss that.
You challenged people?
He challenged it. I did, and he educated me, and I was better for it.
We need a motion.
I would move to adopt the resolution accepting the donation of $1,500 and now potentially more, up to $3,000 from the Rick Rosso and Vicki Underland Rosso to benefit inclusionary housing in Eden Prairie.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Rick, and give Vicki our great appreciation and gratitude as well.
Thank you.
All right. Wow, this is probably one of the latest ever that we've just getting to approving the agenda. So if any of you came tonight hoping for that short meeting, I guess I apologize a little bit, but I think it's been very good. So anybody have any additional items for the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
You're okay, Rick, or do you need to add?
Well, I was going to mention this at consent, Mayor, and we can do it now. We can do it now.
Okay.
We have an additional temporary liquor license. That's why the Goldenrod is here, and that's for the Lions Club for a Million Cups event in December, so we wanted to get that on tonight. So that is just an additional item on the clerk's list on the consent agenda.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, minutes. Anybody have any concerns, corrections about either of them, the workshop or the regular meeting? Is there a motion to approve both of them then together?
I move to approve the council workshop held Tuesday, October 15th, 2019, as well as the city council meeting held Tuesday, October 15th, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Consent calendar. Any items that any of you wish to question or remove? I had one that I wanted to question quickly. And now I'm not finding it. I don't know, but I just wanted to comment that I was just so pleased with the fire station duty crew sleeping quarter piece. Erickson and deferred. Well, I'm not finding it, and I just got this in front of me. I read it off my computer earlier, and now I can't find it. So, is there a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
I move the approval of the item from A to M on consent calendar.
With the addition of this goldenrod.
With the addition of the golden.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Public hearings. Mr. Getcho.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Our first public hearing is a request by Costco to expand their fuel facility at their location on Technology Drive in Eden Prairie. They're requesting to expand the facility that's been in place since 2003 by adding 4 additional dispensers, fueling dispensers at their station. So I believe the applicant is here tonight to give a presentation of the City Council. It requires a public hearing. There's a planned unit development approval that is needed. So the applicant could provide a presentation, and staff and the applicant could answer any questions the council or the public has.
Please come forward and give your name and address.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Julie Anderson with Barkhausen Consulting Engineers. I'm the planning consultant as well as the applicant for this project, and we have a brief PowerPoint presentation that we would like to share with you. So Costco is requesting a PUD amendment and a minor site plan and architectural design review to allow for the expansion of the existing Costco fuel facility. The project site mostly consists of the eastern portion of the existing Costco fuel facility, which is located in the northern area of the Costco site. The project scope includes the installation of 4 new multi-product dispensers, an approximately 2,600 square foot canopy expansion, a new underground storage tank, and a new controller enclosure. The intent of the expansion is to improve vehicle queues, site circulation, and provide a more efficient fuel purchasing experience for Costco members. The existing fuel facility currently contains 8 multi-product dispensers covered by an approximately 3,800 square foot fuel canopy. And here the site plan shows those 4 new dispensers along the eastern edge of the existing fuel facility, and the new controller enclosure along the western edge, similar to the location of the existing controller enclosure. The canopy expansion is designed to match the existing canopy, which includes brick veneer canopy columns, a metal canopy fascia, as well as a brick veneer controller enclosure. The fuel facility design will continue to remain consistent with the overall Costco site and surrounding area. And that concludes our presentation. With me is our team, which includes Jerry Krieg, Development Manager with TJ Design Strategies, and Chris Teasler, Traffic Engineer with Kittleson and Associates. I, as well as the rest of our team, are available to answer any questions that you may have.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Councilman
so quick question. In terms of adding this capacity to the site, I know right now some of the queues get quite lengthy at certain times of the day and certain days of the week. Do you anticipate that this will reduce the amount of the length and the amount of vehicles that are queuing up right now to be serviced because there'll be more throughput, or how do you see that this will change?
Yes, so the intent of the expansion is to help reduce vehicle queues. And I can actually have Chris Teasler with Kittleson and Associates approach the podium. He's a little more experienced and can provide some more detail on how we anticipate that to happen.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Chris Teasler with Kittleson and Associates, the applicant's traffic engineer. To your question about the increased capacity, you're exactly right that by adding additional capacity, we increase the throughput of, in the servicing of vehicles while they get their fuel, and actually reduce queuing. And so we actually have a large database of before and after data with trip generation and queuing, and look at these sites all across the United States. And our traffic study that was a part of our application included that detail. But essentially, we expect queues to be reduced anywhere between 35 and 50% during the peak periods due to that increased throughput and capacity.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Good answer.
Councilmember Narayan.
So the overall queue reduce, that means the idle time waiting for the pump will reduce as well, right?
Yes, that's exactly correct. Yes, so wait times will be reduced.
That has an effect on CO2 emission, isn't it?
Yes.
And have you calculated what that saving is?
I personally have not. It's I guess more of a just a general one-to-one relationship. So the less time people are waiting in a queue and idling their vehicle, waiting to purchase gas, the less idling emissions that are going to occur on the site.
So potentially there is two benefit, right? One is the CO2 emission. Other one is not using the gasoline, right? Not creating the gas as well, right?
Yes, exactly.
But we don't know what that effect is yet.
Not exactly.
I've not done any study on that.
No.
Thank you.
It's not our role, obviously, to micromanage your job, and I trust that you're the expert, and you've done a great job with this. To Councilmember Aho's point, I too frequent getting my gas at this point or at this station, and I know that most cars enter from that eastern north X or entrance there. And that's exactly where they're going to queue back to furthest right away. And I'm just curious why they weren't moved elsewhere, even though I know that the large truck fueling is on that other side. I guess that would be the west side. I'm not really sure, but so I'm assuming that's it. But it just seems like you're complicating the very queuing because that's where the 3 pumps will be.
Yeah, so with many of these expansions in the past 10 years that Costco has undertaken more kind of company-wide to, again, reduce wait times and queues for members, it's quite common for them to go to a 3 or even 4 deep stacked type of configuration like you see on the eastern part of this site. Part of the reason that they're on that side of the site is simply because of the existing underground storage tanks on the west side of the facility, plus where they want to put the new one. And so you know, you're somewhat limited to where we can actually provide the additional dispensers.
Sure.
But there's actually additional, that third row, if you will, of dispensers on the 2 aisles that have them are actually specifically designed to allow for vehicles to pull into and out of that middle space easily and without having to, you know, back up or do any sort of maneuvering. There's actually additional space, more so than the existing space between the 2 original dispensers.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, Councilmember Freiberg.
Thank you. I just have one question. I think I'm reading this right. There's no increase in the underground storage as far as, you know, increasing the size of it at all, or am I wrong?
Yeah, so there's 1 new underground storage tank being added, which allows the site to hold more fuel
How big
at
is
any one
that?
time. 40,000 gallon tank.
Is that like a duplication pretty much of what you have right now? Do you know what those are now?
Mayor, council member, yes. So the existing site currently has 3 20,000 gallon underground storage tanks. 2 of those are regular unleaded. 1 of them is premium. The new underground storage tank right now is supposed to be unleaded, but Costco is currently evaluating whether or not for it to be unleaded or premium.
So you're going to be talking about 100,000 gallons storage at this point. Is and this is for my own knowledge, I'm asking right now. And this can be done without any additional risk whatsoever as far as, because that seems like an awful lot of storage, additional.
Yes, so
I always get a little, you know, I always want a little more clarification when I hear thousands of gallons with a lot of people around underground.
right. So in terms of risk, Costco, when they build these facilities and they put in the underground storage tanks, they comply with all federal, local, and state regulations. So they've been in contact with state agencies to make sure that the proper permits and safety procedures are in place, as well as if there's any regulations that limit the amount of underground storage that could occur for the site. And currently there are no regulations that limit that amount of underground storage.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Nguyen.
Yeah, one more question. Is there any plan to have electric charging stations?
No, not at this station. Costco did look at the site because that was a question raised by commissioners for the electrical vehicle charging stations. But they have found, and they look at these on a periodic basis, case by case, and they have installed them periodically on various sites, but they found that the utilization rate is so low among their members that they end up removing them from the site, that those stalls just sit empty, and other members tend to get frustrated seeing empty stalls being not utilized.
Thank you.
Yes.
We can have more questions later after the public hearing if you wish. We'll have a public hearing now, and then if we'll call you back up if we need to. So unless there's something else, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the City Council on this issue? Council, I think you can probably go ahead and make the motion and complete.
So seeing none, I would move to close the public hearing and adopt a resolution for planned unit development concept review on approximately 18.18 acres and approve the first reading of planned unit development district review with waivers on approximately 18.18 acres and direct staff to prepare a development agreement incorporating staff and commission recommendations and council conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Council, what's your pleasure here. Do you have any more questions, any comments? Should we go ahead and vote?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Councilmember Freiberg, you good?
We can vote.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Look forward to better flow through the pumps there. Thank you. Or at least I need to go at different times.
Yep.
There you go.
All right, let's go with city manager. Mr. Getchell.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Second public hearing of the evening is a request for a building addition at the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District headquarters that's located at 12800 Girard Drive, just north of, west of Gordon Drive. So the applicant, the Watershed District, where their headquarters are located, their offices, are proposing to construct a 486 square foot addition onto their existing office building. The addition is being proposed at the northwest corner of the existing building, and it's being added to accommodate the space needs of their existing staff. So I see Randy Ahern, the district administrator, is here to provide a brief overview of the project and answer any questions that the council or the public may have through the public hearing process. The Planning Commission did vote 7-0 to recommend approval of the project.
Please come forward.
Thank
Welcome.
you, Mr. Mayor and council members. As City Manager Rick had mentioned, my name is Randy Anhorn. I am the district administrator at 9 Mile Creek Watershed. Now, if I can figure out how this works. As Rick had mentioned, we're located at 12800 Girard Drive. You're all probably fairly familiar with the whole process that led us to here. We were donated this 5.3 acre parcel by Barbara Cower back in 2010, 2011. Because we're in a residential neighborhood and we were using this as an office space, educational outreach area, we worked with the city and we had to go into a development agreement that had a couple restrictions on it. One of them being the amount of full-time staff we could have on site. And as I go through, another one will be for subsequent additions or renovations to the property. In addition to the development agreement, we also have a conservation easement over the whole parcel. A lot of the restrictions on the development agreement mimic those on the conservation easement. So I mentioned first off, one of the restrictions was we were restricted to a ceiling of 3 full-time staff on site, probably due to concerns about traffic. I wasn't the administrator at the time, that was one restriction that was put on us. As I came into the administrative job at the Watershed District in 2016, we're in the mid-process of going through our 5th generation watershed management plan, similar to the city. You have a comp plan, 10-year plan that kind of lays out the groundwork for what the city council wants to accomplish and how they want to address things. During that time, our watershed managers set goals and objectives for projects, programs, different things. Part of that was they started thinking, directed staff to come back to the city, see if we could try to raise that limit from 3 to 5 because they felt like we had a lot on our plate and we needed more staff to accomplish what we wanted to do. So we did that, came back here in front of the City Council, February 2018, amended our development agreement, and we raised that from 3 to 5. We currently have 4 staff. And because of limited office space, and we're looking to initiate this small, roughly 500 square foot addition to create the needed offices and storage, as Rick had mentioned, for just our current staff. Another restriction I had mentioned, the first bullet we just talked about. The second bullet here is more about subsequent improvements. Basically what that says is any expansion, modification, or replacement of the existing structure shall not exceed the total ground cover or footprint by more than 50%. Again, the conservation easement with Minnesota Land Trust has the identical restriction. So here's our site. If we can make it out, I don't know if you have anything in front of you, paper, but obviously on your computer. So we have the driveway coming into our existing building to the top. We have 2 different parking lots. One of is permeable pavers. The other one is biogrid grass, so we can let stormwater flow through. We have a cistern there. We have 4 different bioretention for stormwater volume control. But the addition, as Rick had mentioned, is on the northwest portion. It's that little shaded L. on the lower left. So it will be in the back of the building. It also gives us an opportunity to put the addition where we will not need to take down any trees at all. And it has more level, so we won't have to worry as much about grading in that area. As we talked about having a limitation or restriction on a 50% improvement, this table goes through our existing conditions. So when Barbara donated it, if we took away the garage, because we ended up taking the garage down, the footprint for the existing home at that time was 3,826 ground square feet. So if we look at the bottom row, the maximum amount allowable per the development agreement, so if we multiply that by 1.5, is 5,739 square feet. After our renovations to add our meeting space on the building, we also put some basement storage area in there at the same time. But for ground square footage, footprint, at the end of the day, when we moved in 2014-ish, we had a ground square footage of 4,806. So if we add this roughly 500 square feet, it puts us at about 5,300, still well below that maximum threshold. One thing we are going to be asking, and it's in front of you as well, we'd like to maintain the current aesthetics of the building. Currently it's more of a prairie home, maybe Frank Lloyd Wright-ish. We have gray with a red trim up on top. It's slab on grade. So this addition is going to be one level, just at roughly 500 square feet. And I believe under city ordinances, an addition on a office complex would be required to have some certain kind of facade materials. I believe it's 75% glass, 25% stone, or the other way around.
Combination thereof.
So anyway, we're looking on a waiver on that so we can maintain the aesthetics, keep the look more in a residential neighborhood and all. This is just showing our erosion control plan and our entrance. We're going to be entering through our parking lot. That's the dashed line to get to the back area. We have silt fence on the back side of that. There is topography as we head down to the Cardinal Creek wetlands. We're going to make sure all that is contained up in our area and we don't get any runoff. We show the addition. We show here actually a rain garden going in. There's currently a rain garden there in place. This addition will displace that. When we did our renovations back in 2014 to meet stormwater rules of the city and our own, which was 1 inch on impervious surface area, our amount with the 4 different bioretention, the permeable pavers, the overflow parking, and the cistern that takes water off the roof when we reuse it, we far exceeded any stormwater need whatsoever. So even by taking out this rain garden, adding the amount of impervious surface, we really wouldn't even need the rain garden. We'd still meet our rules, which actually have gotten more stringent over that time from 2014. However, because water is our purview, right? And we're an educational area that permit applicants come in and we look at different things that they can do to meet. We will be replacing that to take runoff from that roof in approximately the same spot. So I mentioned we're not going to be taking down any existing trees. That's also good. We're also having the addition in the backside, so I think it reduces any visual issues. On the lower picture, there's a little round area up in the top corner. We have a little outdoor educational seating area. We have gone through landscape restoration on the front part of our building where we've removed about 2.5 acres of buckthorn. So we had phase 1, phase 2. We worked with city staff through that process of having a master plan for landscaping around the parcel. In that that would be the northeast corner in there would be phase 3. Eventually we're going to take down some more buckthorn. The city's been doing it along their trail going down to Cardinal Creek wetland trail. So on our parcel, eventually we're going to be doing that. What we'd like to do is add some trees in that area to provide some time for that screening to come up, because obviously buckthorn isn't good, but it does provide screening. There's a lot of green there. So this would give us a little bit of time before we go in there and move that stuff out. So all in all, I think I'm here today just to request the City Council to find our PUD and site plan request in compliance with the development agreement, allowing us to move forward with our proposed addition. Again, because we're not seeking to increase the number of employees, that's at 5, traffic shouldn't change. We're just trying to simply take care of the needs that we have internally. I have a person sitting at the front reception desk with stuff all over right now, and we need to get ourselves a little bit more contained. And then again, we're looking at a waiver for the architectural standards portion so we can maintain the integrity of our current aesthetics of the home or the office. So with that, I can take questions.
Great, thank you. Council, any questions at this point? Thank you. This is a public hearing, so we'll open it up, and if we have questions after we close it, we'll call you back up. Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing. Anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on this topic or issue? Council, why don't we make the motion, and then I'll ask you one more time, or is that fine?
I think I'll move to close the public hearing, and then I'd just like to just ask a couple more questions.
Let's close it. So is there a second?
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you. So question, when would you anticipate this construction to commence, and what period of time would be required to complete it?
Well, I would have to come back, the earliest I'd be able to come back before City Council will be December 3rd. Then I'd have to let our architects know that go ahead, put out for enough design so we can go out for bid. I realistically won't be looking at starting the process until spring. Okay. As far as time for that, it's rather small. So I would hope to have it done by at least late summer.
All right, thank you. That was the only question I had left.
Any other questions at all? We can go ahead and make a motion then, and we can still discuss if we wish. So anyone, would you complete the rest of the motion then? Somebody? You? Well.
All right, I would move to adopt the resolution for planned unit development concept review on 5.31 acres and approve the first reading of the ordinance for planned unit development district review with waivers on 5.31 acres and direct staff to prepare a development agreement incorporating staff and commission recommendations and council conditions.
Is there a second? Second. Any other discussion, questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, great. Congratulations. Look forward to seeing it. All right, we are moving down to payment of claims. Any items to question prior to making a motion? Okay, is there a motion for approval of the payment of claims?
I move the approval of payment claim as submitted.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Councilmember Aho.
Aye.
Councilmember Freiberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Narayan.
Aye.
Mayor Case.
Aye. All right, moving down, we had no reports of council members. Moving down to city manager, Mr. Rosso, yeah.
That's all right.
I'm just getting sad. Okay,
it's
Mr.
Okay.
I just want to say his name as much as I can in the final couple weeks.
Yeah, no, he has one more meeting. I hope I have several more.
I do too.
Yeah, he has one more. We're December 3rd.
Okay, Mr. Getcho.
Be here December 3rd. All right. So I do have a few reports. As you know, we are currently constructing a ground storage water reservoir, a 4 million gallon reservoir, Eden Prairie Road, Highway 212. It's been in our capital improvement plan. It's a project that we've talked about for quite a while. It's something that we need to borrow money for, debt that will be secured by revenue within that enterprise fund. And our financial advisor, Bruce Kimmel, is here to go over this particular bond issuance and report on that. I will note that the title of the item for the resolution asks the council to issue $5.125 million in debt, but the report I have has $4.920 million in debt. So I think Mr. Kimmel must have gotten some really good bids, and he might be able to tell us that we are borrowing even less money than we anticipated. So I'm sure we're going to get some good news on that, and hopefully on our bond rating as well.
Please. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Bruce Kimmel with Ellers. I will keep this brief. You've had a long meeting, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to work with the city on this great bond issue. And I'm very pleased to share the results of today's sale. So as Mr. Getchow mentioned, we went out to the market today with a proposal for financing $5,125,000 to fund $5 million worth of your underground storage reservoir. And we received 6 bids on the city's behalf at 10 o'clock this morning. The winning bid came from Piper Jaffray here in Minneapolis with a true interest cost. That's an all-inclusive interest rate for the entire 20-year term, and that's a fixed interest rate of 2.16%. Wow. So just over 2% for 20-year bonds, which is still remarkable to me. We keep waiting for rates to go up, at least in a sustained way, and they will float up, and then they come right back down again. Generally speaking, there's too much demand for bonds chasing too little supply. And especially for a highly, highly rated city like Eden Prairie, you're the direct beneficiary of that demand for bonds chasing the inadequate supply. I would mention also that the bidding among the 6 bidders was extremely aggressive. The second place bid, was Stiefel Nicholas, and their bid was only 4 basis points or 0.04% higher than Piper Jaffray. The next bid after that, Northland Securities, was just 3 basis points over that. Baird was just another 5 basis points over that one. FTN from Memphis, Tennessee, of all places, was just another 4 basis points over. And the final place bid, Boney Mellon, was a little bit off the pace. But altogether, 5 of the 6 bids were extremely aggressive, seeking to buy the city of Eden Prairie's bond issue. So the net result of all that great bidding and the winning bid from Piper Jaffray was what's called a premium bid. So essentially they wanted higher coupons on those bonds than the actual yield. So the investors buying the bonds might have a 3% coupon, but their bond might actually only be yielding them 1.5%, depending on which bonds they were buying. And so what happens then is they offer more money than the bonds are worth. And since the city only needed $5 million for the reservoir project, Ms. Kachiver said, let's downsize the bond issue because you didn't need that extra premium money sloshing around. So we took the premium and we reduced the bond amount by $205,000 to the amount that Mr. Getchow mentioned of $4,920,000. That's part of the final resolution for your consideration tonight. I would also mention that the net result of this great bid, and this was about 30 basis points or 0.3% better than what we had projected, is that the overall bond debt service that you'll pay over 20 years is about $160,000 less than projected. So not tons of money, but everything helps, and that'll certainly help keep water utility rates a little bit more affordable going forward, and knowing that you have other projects in the future as well. Finally, I did want to mention the credit ratings that Mr. Getchow alluded to. As part of this bond issuance process, the city did seek affirmation of your AAA ratings from both Moody's Investor Service and Standard & Poor's. And I've got to say, Mayor and Council, that this was probably the easiest affirmation of AAA ratings that I've been through in a long time. Number one, your team here, city staff, does a fantastic job of preparing for these rating calls and then making the city's case on the rating call. So basically all these people here were involved and did a fantastic job. Makes my job very, very easy as your advocate. And really, it seemed that the analysts from Moody's and S&P were struggling to come up with questions they could ask or things they could poke and prod to see if there were any chinks in your armor. And there was really not. You really came through with flying colors with both agencies. I would just like to summarize, I won't go through all the details, but S&P, in affirming their AAA rating, mentioned your very strong economy, your strong management with strong financial practices and procedures, your strong budgetary performance with operating surpluses, and it goes on. Your very strong budgetary flexibility. You have strong fund balances that you can tap in the event of a rainy day. Very strong liquidity, which means you can access your cash if you need it. And then a very strong debt and contingency liability profile. In other words, you don't have a lot of debt outstanding, especially for a city of your size. So all of those factors combine to essentially a slam dunk affirmation of your AAA, which helps to reduce your borrowing cost and help contribute to the results we had today. So let me stop there, ask if you have any questions about either the bond sale results or the credit rating. Again, it's a great pleasure to work with you. And if you don't have any questions, I would ask you to consider the resolution awarding the bonds to Piper Jaffray.
I know we just filmed what he just said, and I'd love to get that out on our, I don't know, Facebook or something, but for sure our website. And thank you.
You did mention the good-looking council that got it too, right?
He did not mention that. By the
That was
way.
absolutely actually the number one criteria.
But really, thank you. I mean, obviously you're
Excellent
thanking
job.
us, and we our staff have done an amazing job. But it's so nice to have it verbalized and in such an articulate way. So we appreciate the words back, the reflection back. We feel proud of what our staff and what our city's doing, and we get great commendation, I think, from our residents. But it's just really nice to hear. So thank you. Any questions whatsoever?
I think we need that final number
Well,
again.
it's 4920, so 4,920,000.
Yeah.
The only question I had in general for staff was, is it typical that we would actually go into the ground and begin the build part of this construction without actually having the money in hand?
Yes.
Oh, over there. I'm looking at Robert, but
Yeah. Sue's got the money.
Very common. The council approved a reimbursement resolution, I don't know, 6 months ago. And so as long as you have that in place, you're
so we were
able-
covered in the event
Yes.
yeah,
Yep,
okay.
so we're
I
fine.
probably missed that piece in some hidden I assumed that we weren't going out on a limb, but all right. Council, any other questions or comments? If not, I'll need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Oh, go ahead.
Make a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing issue, awarding sale, prescribing the form and details, and providing for the payment of $4,920,000 in general obligation bonds, Series 219A.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That's exciting. I know that we get a lot of questions, all of us I think do. Is that something with the LRT? You know, because I see that construction. I'm so glad we put a sign up there that said, no, we're putting up, you know, a groundwater storage facility, and it's wonderful. But I'm excited to see not only completed, but the historic kiosk piece of it. I think that's going to be really cool. All right. Mr. Getro.
Yes, Mayor, Council, one more report. It's been in the work plan of our Heritage Preservation Commission for a few years to work toward designating a segment of the historic Yorkville and Blooming Trail located in the James A. Brown Conservation Area as a heritage preservation site. So I know, again, this has been discussed at joint workshops, goal setting sessions, and this particular item has already gone through both the Heritage Preservation Commission and now the Planning Commission, and the third and final stop is at the City Council level prior to the preparation of a heritage preservation plan. And I think all along the way, one of our members, one of our Heritage Preservation Commission members, Paul Thorpe, also a member of the Historical Society in Eden Prairie. He's very active. You've probably, I think he's brought his maps to pretty much every single city event this year, whether it's Arts in the Park or the Fall Harvest Festival. Paul's there with the maps. But Paul has provided two, and now this will be his third presentation, and this is very much, this project is thanks to him bringing this forward. But I know he has a presentation and then an action on behalf of the council to move to designate this historic location.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me. I've been working on this project for a long time. In fact, it's the reason I joined the Heritage Preservation Commission, so it's really gratifying that it's kind of coming to a head here. So we're just going to look at some maps, because that's my passion, is the maps. And the Minnesota Valley Oxcart Trail, well, shortly after Fort Snelling was developed in the 1820s, fur traders started coming from Winnipeg up in north of North Dakota, and they would come down the west side of the Red River till they got to the Minnesota River, and then they would go along the south side of the Minnesota River until they got to either Mendota, which was straight south of the Fort Snelling, or they would take a north route And I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this little blue line right there where I'm pointing, that's Eden Prairie. And that was the Eden Prairie segment of the Minnesota Valley Trail. Now these traders they would come down with a two-wheeled ox cart and one oxen, two big wooden wheels, and a platform, and they'd load them up with furs, and they'd head down from Winnipeg, which was called the Selkirk settlement at the time. And it would take them about 30 days to get here. And their axles were wood on wood with the wheels, and they made a tremendous amount of friction and squeaking noises, and they'd have to replace those axles every 6 days while they were coming down. And it was a dangerous trip, and these are some really hardy people. So I developed a map last year showing historic sites in Eden Prairie, and this outline in red here is the town of Hennepin. And this blue line is the ox cart trail, and also the Bloomington to Yorkville to Bloomington road site, and we can explain that a little further. Okay, here's the town of Hennepin. Now we had hired an archaeologist. We'd gotten a grant to do some investigation in the town of Hennepin area, and they had come up with this Yorkville and Bloomington road literature that they'd found on some old maps and some newspaper articles. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the town of Hennepin because it's kind of an important piece to the development of Eden Prairie. The town of Hennepin was developed by a consortium of 6 developers on the east side and a guy by the name of John Mackenzie on the west side. 1853, it's before the government survey came through. And I wanted to show this map because this is the location of where the Yorkville to Bloomington Road route came through. And I wanted to show you how closely it matched the pattern of streets back in 1853. So I don't think it was a coincidence that the people that put this plat together used the location of that road as their future street layout. Now let's go back to that back one. There's a lot of speculation in lots in town of Hennepin, and the lot prices got up to as high as $25 a piece for a 1/5 of an acre lot. And what happened with Hennepin is when the government came through, did the survey of Eden Prairie Township, these developers didn't show up at the land office and buy the land underneath their development. And it was sold to other people. There was a recession at the time. They probably couldn't come up with the money, but the speculation on the lots, $25 a piece for a 1/5 of an acre lot, they were 66 by 165. And you think then the acres were selling by the government for $1.25. So there's a lot of people that speculated in lots out there that lost everything they had, everything they'd invested. So here's a copy of the 1854 survey with the ox cart trail showing on there. And you can see the town of Hennepin. That's a symbol. That doesn't really show the extent of the town. Where's my cursor? Yeah, this town of Hennepin actually went way out into there. And what existed in 1854 was a warehouse down by the river, right there. There was a ferry, and there was a tavern, which is right up in here. And that site's still there, where the tavern was. That's on Old Homeward Hills Road and Riverview Road. And then this is where the ox cart trail would have gone through. So after we got our report from the archaeologist, I went over to Carver County because I was looking for this map, because they had talked about this surveyor by the name of Brunius, who later became Carver County surveyor. I figured they might have a map there. Well, this map was prepared by the Hennepin County surveyor, but recorded in Carver County, and Hennepin County can't find it, so they don't. It's probably somewhere, but it's not where they can find it. So I had a little argument, a friendly argument with both the archaeologist and the people that put that report together about whether this road was built over the ox cart trail. And I maintained that it was. They maintained that they couldn't prove it, so they weren't going to put it in the report. And they finally relented a little bit and said that it was possible that it was the ox cart trail. So this is a table of bearings and distances down here. So I'm a land surveyor, partially retired, or depending on the day. So I took this data and converted it into modern day data and put it on this next map. So it's maybe kind of hard to see, but there's this is LiDAR contours, which are really precise in shape, not so precise in the actual elevation data, but really precise in the shapes. So anytime you're looking at a map and you can see, like I'm going through here where the contours widen, it means that there was a flat spot in the side of a rather steep hill. In fact, a really steep hill. So where these red X's are, or I guess it's the yellow dots, is that right? Yeah, the yellow dots represent the courses that was on the survey from the last sheet, and you can see how it really hits this road as we go. Now we're asking for just right through in this section right here, which is the James Brown Conservancy area, yeah. And that's just right through here. And you can see this is a area photo was taken in 1945. You can see there's virtually no vegetation on this slope, but it's very steep. It's very steep. You can see the erosion coming through here. So that trail is going right through here in the conservation area. And that's what we're asking for, the designation to protect that for the future. I think we've got a couple of pictures of what it looks like now. This is what it looks like now. In 1945, there wasn't a tree on there, so it's really, really grown up. It was all prairie grass back then. So we think it's important. We think it's an important feature in the city, and something that we're kind of passionate about, kind of raising awareness of it so that it can just stay for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. You're amazing. I just want to say that in our city, whether it's the Historical Society, the Rotary, the Lions, but every now and then you get individual people that have a passion for something that come into the organization and bring that passion, and it just lives, within that person for those amount of years that we well, in your case, Paul, that we get to have you. So Kathy and I talk about that a lot, how lucky and happy we are that you live in Eden Prairie and that you stepped up with this amazing skill set that you have with surveying, and that you're so interested in our history. I've, as a sixth grade teacher, I've taught the ox cart trail for 35 years. I learned so much tonight. I'm like, well, I would have shared that. I had no idea. And I had no idea that it laid on the exact roadbed of one of the roads through the town of Hennepin, which I also taught all those years. So I learned so much from you tonight. Council, any questions whatsoever? Do we want to briefly explain maybe what the designation actually means? Because we have designated sites right now. It's not National Register of Historic Places. It's not that. So I don't know. Is that Jan? Is that you, David? Somebody? Maybe just a brief explanation of what the designation actually will mean. Somebody? Yeah, Jan.
Your Honor, council members, the designation is a local designation, so it does give our Heritage Preservation Commission the opportunity to look at plans to protect this area. So that'll be kind of the next step. We'll be devising some plans to actually talk about the resources there and how we will protect them and potentially bring attention to them as well. Make sure that the public is aware of this historic asset. And then if it was private property, they would actually have to get approval for any changes to the property that might impact the resource. So that's obviously, we're restricting it to the public areas, that there aren't any issues with that on any private property, but typically with those designations, that would be the case.
Great, thank you. And just for our taxpayers' information, we turned all the heat off in here. That's why Janet has her winter jacket on inside. We're trying to save a few bucks. Just briefly, too, that the authority to designate comes from the fact that we are a federally sanctioned certified local government, which this council, the Council of Eden Prairie, selected to be that. That's before my time, right? 92, 93? I'm forgetting. I don't think I voted on that. I don't remember. But at any rate, we've been a certified local government for a long time, and that gives us really some interesting authority and powers to do things just like this and protect our heritage. So again, thank you, Paul, for bringing us this information. Any other questions? Councilmember Freiberg.
Paul, I was just going to say, I, for one, like your maps. I mean, when you joined the Heritage Preservation Commission, I think we served together about a year. That was the thing about you, that you dug up stuff no one else could. I gotta ask you, and you might have told me one time, as much effort that went into the town of Hennepin, laid out, I mean, it's very impressive how they laid it out.
Why did it fail?
What's that?
Why did it fail?
Truly, and I think you might have told me before,
Yeah.
how did that fail to be absolutely obliterated?
Yeah.
Right. Well, the people who had a claim on the land, they didn't actually own it because they couldn't buy it until the federal government did the survey. Now, what every other town along the river, Shakopee, Carver, Chaska, the proprietors of the town went to the land office and bought the land underneath their subdivision. And the people who did Hennepin just walked away from it.
And whatever development occurred down there, which was very little, but there were a few homes and a warehouse and some other things, when the railroad went through in 1871, 4 miles north, it just destroyed it. The railroad went to towns, those towns lived. The railroad skipped some towns, they died. But
right, and then the ferry, which was the main
became
the
old
main
technology,
economic
right.
deal, and Eden Prairie just went away.
Yep.
Well, on paper, it sure looked impressive on that map. I mean, it definitely did. Thank you, Paul.
So I know it's getting late, but I don't want to cut people off. Any questions or comments?
Just quick clarification. So when we designate this road to be historical, what does that mean? I know we're protecting, do we have a sign there describing this to the residents, or?
That's the next phase of this process, is to come up with a work plan and what to do with the asset.
Right. So how do you describe it? How do you keep it up? How do you maintain it?
It's really, really hard to get to, physically hard to get to. So not many people are probably ever going to see it unless something changes. But I don't know can't imagine what that would be. But
this is raising an awareness and beginning that process that we can now begin to decide what are we going to do with it.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I will entertain a motion then.
I'll make a motion to designate a segment of the historic Yorkville and Bloomington Road within the James A. Brown Conservation Area as depicted in the enclosed nomination report as a heritage preservation site under City Code Chapter 11.05, Criterion 1, in association with events that have made significant contribution to the broad patterns of Eden Prairie's history.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Lindahl, but thank you, Mr. Thorpe, for being here and all that you're doing to volunteer. This is all volunteer, by the way. He's amazing, but thank you for all the work that you've done for the city of Eden Prairie. All right, no other business to come before us, I believe. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the city council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Ron, on paper, you gotta admit, that really looked impressive, though. I mean, the first time I saw it.